It's very exciting what I get to do, Dave. I've been fortunate to kind of go on into my little endeavor here to meet people who really know what they're talking about.
Really?
And so I'm calling you out. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Smock, PK Plumbing. He's the manager. He runs the plumbing side of the house.
Correct.
And a master plumber.
Master plumber.
So when you get to a position in the world where you need plumbing, you guys are the guys to call.
I'd like to think so.
And I tell you, it was so neat. We've had a couple hours of discussion. You came over initially. We talked about what kind of a plan we could put together to help make this something fun for you and for us, because we liked what you guys do as we did a little research about you and then reached out to you. And it literally became like, you're a wise man. Now I know why you're the master plumber.
Well, thanks. Yeah, so it was supposed to be what, 15 to 30 minute
right, just
interview,
a little sit-down discussion and talk about it.
I think we ended up at about 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours. Well, I told you the last meeting I had, so whatever you want to talk, we could talk. But ladies and gentlemen, as the Cardinal Cowboy, that's what I get to do a little bit of in St. Louis, because we do talk to the leaders in our community. That's just something I enjoy doing, and I've been working hard to get to meet these people, and so some of them will actually come in and talk to us. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Well, I really appreciate you reaching out, and when I was called and asked to, you wanted to interview not a professional plumber, but what's the word she used, a expert plumber.
Expert, yeah.
I thought, boy, they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel here. They couldn't find one, so they called me. No, I'm kidding. It's been 41 years. It's been a pretty wild ride being a plumber.
Well, and it's another one of those essential trades. I mean, it's something literally.
It is, absolutely.
Absolutely. Since about 1850, I'm guessing, indoor plumbing.
Indoor plumbing, right.
It's only been close to 200 years.
My mom told me all about the times that she had to go out to the outhouse. I don't think I could have lived in that time. I have to have my porcelain, right?
I have a cabin that my parents have had since we were kids, and it literally they had an outhouse still.
Really?
An outhouse. Really? And so I never had to use it.
Sears and Roebuck magazine sitting next to it, our corn cob.
Right, and it literally was like, this is where we used to have to go and put on your coat and go outside. And,
that's right.
And use it. But now we've got some advanced stuff. So I guess my first question I always ask is, why did you decide to become a plumber?
It just seemed like the thing to do. So when I was in high school, so there's six of us kids. I'm the middle of six, and my dad was a lathe operator, worked a car carburetor, and my senior year in high school, I got the opportunity to take college classes, and so machinist was the area that I was thinking about going. I had started working, actually my first plumbing job was working for RainSoft, installing water softeners. And I really enjoyed it. And then when I had the opportunity to do the machinist, or to go to Jefferson College and to learn how to start as a machinist, I went to my dad and he says, no, you don't want to do that. Become a plumber. We're always going to need plumbers. And so from his advice, I got the opportunity to go to work for a plumbing company, and that's where it all began. And that was back in 1979.
Okay, yeah, I was a youngster at that point, but it's a good career to get into, like you said, because you do end up with something that's always in need. I mean, a lot of people talk about, I want to go to college and get something people definitely have to have. And so many of my buddies, I went away to college. I went to St. Louis University, right?
Right.
It was a 20-minute drive, but I did live on campus. But I got my degree in undergrad in communications. So I'm like, you always have to have communications. Some of these other jobs and careers, they're going away. Computers are taking that away.
Right.
But plumbing's not one of those. You're not going to be able to get a robot in a plumbing system. I don't think that's going to be a long time before they can automate all of that, because it's all custom, right, for every situation.
Yeah. I don't see that ever becoming, and I can't say ever, because, to tell you the truth, there are things that are happening today that if you'd have told me when I was in grade school or high school that these things would be happening, I'd say you're nuts. And there are things that are happening today. So, I mean, human beings are very resourceful, right? And we come up with new stuff all the time. So I'm sure that there's ways to automate things. I don't see that on the near horizon. So, yeah, I think you're always going to need plumbers, at least in the near future.
In at least
So,
century or so.
I would say probably, yeah.
All right. Well, tell me a little bit about the path that led to your success and PK Plumbing's success, if you would, that helped you guys get to where you are. Really a well-known, established company, 45 years experience. I think I see on your website. Combined
Yeah,
with,
that's
with what you-
so. My path was kind of a tough one, and I worked for a small town plumbing company in Festus. Most of the time when people in St. Louis say, tell me a little bit about you, that's code for where did you go to high school, right? So.
Right. A little bit of Festus, is that
St. Pius X High School.
we played them in high school too. At Lutheran
you?
South. We went
That's
to
right.
shootouts
That's
and
right.
we beat them in shootouts in soccer. So
Gotcha.
it was crazy.
Well,
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. That's all right. I was after my time. If I would have been there, that wouldn't.
We would have beat us.
Yeah,
for sure.
I was the star athlete.
Did you play soccer too?
I played in grade school.
Okay.
And I went to Sacred Heart in Festus.
Okay.
And at the time, Sacred Heart and Our Ladies were the two big soccer names. My coach played for the St. Louis Stars. It was Tony Kuster.
Wow.
And then he went to DeSoto and was the coach there. And then Our Ladies Catholic school coach was Dan Bokern, who played for the St. Louis Stars. And so when Sacred Heart and Our Ladies met, we duked it out. It was some really good matches. In fact, my 8th grade year, we went to state, and we ended up losing. But when I got to high school back then in the 70s, even the Catholic schools did not have soccer programs.
Really?
Yeah. So we had kids that went to Our Lady Queen of Peace and all these different Catholic schools around the area. And they had huge soccer programs, and there were some good soccer players. We would have had a really heck of a team, but they didn't have that program back then. So I didn't play soccer in high school. Played football in high school.
Okay.
And track.
Okay.
So I was not the star athlete. I was just pulling your leg.
Oh, no, well, I understand that. Well, and that we talk always about, give us something about your background so people can understand why it is you and would you agree that sports probably helped you to develop competitiveness and drive and learning to be on a team and win and lose and all those things that you learned by playing sports?
No.
Not at all.
Not at all. Not at all. What taught me how to grab hold of tenacity and to make it was, I had a big fall in my life, and I came out of I started actually in grade school. I started with alcohol, and I told myself I'd never get into drugs. I started drinking at an early age, and then high school it progressed. Came out of high school, went into the service, and it really progressed. And so my senior year in high school was with a group of guys, and we were pretty intoxicated.
Okay.
And somebody handed me, a joint. And what I heard when they handed me that was not, do you want this? What I heard was, do you want to be a part of who we are? Do you want to be a part of? And that's what I was seeking at the time.
Right.
And so I took that drug, and my drug use just shot sky high.
Wow.
I do not buy into smoking weed doesn't lead to bigger things, because in my case it did.
Yeah.
And then coming out of the service, I continued that abuse, and it ended up to a fall. I was married, had 2 kids, and wasn't working, couldn't find work. In the 80s, mid to late 80s and early 90s, it was really bad to be in the trades, and and because of the wreckage of my past and because of my disease, we pretty much lost everything. We were homeless. And that fall taught me, that what it means to take responsibility for myself. I could blame it on a lot of people,
Right.
and but recovery would have eluded me until I took responsibility for my actions, and I had to do that. I was faced with it, and my wife never left me, my kids never left me, and we came out of it, and I came out of it a stronger person. My wife and I's relationship is probably the strongest it's ever been. But it was getting to the point where it knocked me to my knees, and I had to turn my will and my life over to the care of a higher power, which I choose to call God, and learn that I'm not in charge and that I'm not in control.
Yeah.
And that's what taught me which path to take. And there's days, I have to tell you, there are days when I look to my God and I say, I don't want to do this anymore. It's become tougher with the internet. It's become tougher with immediate gratification. Dealing with some customers can be really, really difficult. And I think and today's day and age, it's hard to find help, and demand the jobs that are in front of me. And some days I look to God and I say, I don't want to do this anymore. And look what I'm still doing, right? I'm still a plumber because I still have, he still uses me in this role. And so even though I say it, I look to him and say, it's your will, not mine. So,
well, and ladies and gentlemen, that's why we allow to have an open discussion here, because this isn't just about a specific expertise or a special niche. We'll allow for up to a half hour of discussion on this show if we feel the story is appropriate. We talked a little bit about that before, but it always ties into the real world and the business side of it. So that helped develop you, and that's where you came out and said, got to get it together. And I'm going to become a plumber. And it's a trade that you enjoyed and mastered. And now you're a master plumber and you run a company.
Well, I got to a point where, and I did a lot of new work. I did a lot of new houses. And, and in a new house, you got to dig a ditch, right?
Right.
To put the pipes in the ground. And, before they pour the floor. And I always enjoyed that aspect of the job. And I got to a point where I just felt like I was beating my head against the wall, and I kept telling God, I don't want to do this anymore. Get me out of here and find me something else. And when we got to a point where we were losing the house, I'll never forget this. It was my metanoia. It was my conversion, right? I was new in recovery, just had found recovery, and my sponsor always told me, you get to a point where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you tell God you're willing to do something. And if he holds it up to you, it's put up or shut up time. And I remember this, I'll never forget it. I was standing in my kitchen, and I was sick and tired of being a plumber. I was sick and tired of digging ditches, but I was more in the pain of knowing that they were coming to get my house and that I couldn't put food on the table for my family became greater. It was greater than the things that I was sick and tired of.
Right.
And I told God, I said, I don't care. I can't live like this anymore. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I don't care if it's digging a ditch. I'll do it. And I no sooner said it, my dad, and the phone rang, and I answered the phone. It was my dad. And he said, I found a job for you. I said, what is it? He said, well, it's digging a ditch. And I just stood there. I couldn't believe it. I took the phone away from my ear, and I just looked up, and my ego, I said, you're laughing at me. Look, and I wanted to say no. And those words that my sponsor said came back to me. And so I said, I do it. And it ended up being something that was going to help out another person. What I had to do was to dig and form up a sidewalk so this man that my dad was working for could make it from his house to his workshop, because he had gotten to the point where he couldn't walk without a wheelchair. And his son needed somebody digging for him the sidewalk up so he could pour it. They put $200 cash in my pocket, put food on my table. And what I realized with that was that as I unpacked it over the years was that God was just waiting for that crack in my armor to where I got to a point where I had set my ego aside. And I said, whatever your will is, I'll do it. And that was him reaching in and grabbing me by the hand and say, now let me show you how to do this. And at that point is when I realized I'm not in charge. I'm not in control. It's not about what I want. It's about what does God want me to do. And that was the beginning of a path that led to where I'm at today. You know, where I look at what I do, not so much as a job, but as a calling. You know, I learned this skill to help people. It's not always about the money. Right. It's about who am I helping, right?
Well, great point there, because there's anything is open for discussion on this show, because we want to help people to understand and realize everything that's involved with becoming a professional at any number of professions that are out there. And very often people do share personal stories to help. And right. I think that's neat for other people to see, because they go, wow, I went through something like that too. And I thought my world was crashing down, and it only happened to me. And they say, wow, there's a professional who now is at the top of the game, running an organization as a master plumber, and he got there. Maybe I can do it too.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, everybody's got a story, right? Everybody's got a story. Everybody has. Sometimes they don't realize what my story is. My spiritual director always tells me, he says, the reason God created human beings is because he loves a good story.
I have a similar comedic side of that to say, God got bored with the dinosaurs and just had to create something a little bit along those lines, though, really.
Right.
And but he really, not to get too, agnostic, and then there's atheist, which is a totally different perspective.
Right.
That I think doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you analyze it, but that's just my perspective.
Right.
But then you have to believe in a certain higher power. If you analyze the way all this, even my own mom discussed with me recently, and she's done very well and got the building named after her, so very well respected. And she said, do you think it even makes sense to go from an anthropod to an amoeba to a squirrel to a chimpanzee to a human being? That's way too complicated for what we've seen on here. And so,
well, I go to that story that I just told you, and it's a true story. It absolutely happened that way. Just think of what had to happen to get everything into place, that I would say I'm willing to do whatever it takes, even if it means digging a ditch, and then have my dad call me and say it's digging a ditch. It really wasn't digging a ditch. And to me, that's God saying, you know, he put that inspiration for my dad to say what he did, so that I knew where it came from. You know, to think of what all had to happen for that to transpire, to me, it can't be left to coincidence. I don't believe in that.
Yeah, well, and the reason I believe I survived a coma and everything I went through, I want other people to share their story. Hopefully, we don't have everybody here that has to have gone through a coma. That's kind of a crazy thing that happened. But like I said, almost everybody goes through some difficult situation, and they still end up, if they land on their feet and have the right support, doing something productive with their lives, no matter what that is. It sounds like you found that. What is it about your business that fuels your passion? I mean, obviously, going to the ranks of master plumber, running a company, there's a reason you enjoy doing this a lot. What would you say that is?
So I'm a puzzler, right?
Okay.
One of my favorite memories of my childhood was my dad coming home on a Friday evening, and we would all, you know, all six of us would be there. My dad would come home and he'd bring a jigsaw puzzle, usually 1,000 to 1,500 piece jigsaw puzzle, and he'd open it up right after dinner. Mom would clear the table and he'd open it up, and then he'd dump it out, and he'd go through and get all the straight edge pieces. And then once the straight edge pieces were all out, he'd put the rest of the puzzles back in the box and set it to the side. And then we would all come together and we would work that frame of that puzzle. And then we'd take all the pieces and lay them out and turn them over. And then we'd start working that puzzle. And we'd work that puzzle till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then, you know, somebody would get tired and they'd go get in bed. But the minute you woke up in the morning and came out, somebody was sitting at that table working that puzzle. Right. It was one of my most favorite memories. I love a jigsaw puzzle. So I love a puzzle in life, right? I love to be challenged with something that somebody else can't figure out. You know, that fueled my passion for plumbing and art. I'm an artist. I've always been able to draw. Okay. When I would do a job, you know, a new house, remodel, whatever, I'd stand back and look at the stacks, or I'd look at the water lines, you know, and they were run 4-inch centers, and the stacks would be completely plumb, and the letters on the plumbing would line completely up. And I actually had contractors that I did work for that would go behind me and take pictures of some of the work that I did. You know,
you mentioned that in our discussion. It got to be where it was for you as a work of art. So that's the connection from the puzzle to the plumbing,
right?
And it's essentially a puzzle for you. And people
Correct.
would see the work that you put together and go, "That's beautiful," like
Right.
like a finished puzzle,
Right.
And put together in pieces.
Yep.
So that makes sense. And
My wife walked onto the job one day. I was installing copper in a basement, you know, hooking all the drops up, hooking up the water heater. And I was in the middle of running plumbing, and she walked on the job, and she looked up and she goes, "Now I understand why you like this. It's putting together a jigsaw puzzle." And that's true.
And the cool thing about that particular puzzle, by the time you're done with it, you're also providing the most essential thing humans need for survival,
Right.
Water, right?
Water and drainage.
And drainage, yeah.
Yeah. If you're going to have the water, you got to.
You better have the drainage, too.
Yeah, you got to have the
Great
drainage.
point. But yeah,
That's right.
essentially, we cannot survive with more than like 2 days without water.
Right,
You
yeah.
can go without food for a week, I think they say,
Yeah,
but very important stuff. Well, I mean, that's why we say these businesses that people run in our country and our wonderful community literally have huge impact, because they are doing essential things that are required for our sustenance, for us to exist. And plumbing is one of those.
Well, and that's a big, you know, that becomes a big issue, because, you know, and I'm not saying that people aren't handy, because they are, but, you know, a lot of people don't understand the danger, not just to property, but to health, if the plumbing system isn't done correctly. You know, you and I were talking before we did the program. You know, I've run into people that, you know, putting in a gas water heater, and people think, yeah, I can do that, it's not a problem. You know, until they have carbon monoxide, because, you know, the flue's not sized correctly anymore. You know, and really what should have been done was that water heater either needed to become electric or become a power vented water heater, because the flue, if a flue's too big, you know, somebody comes in and an HVAC guy comes in and replaces your furnace and takes it out of that masonry flue, and now it's a high efficiency, and it's a PVC flue vent, and then you still have a water heater dumping into that flue. If that flue's too big, that masonry, the clay doesn't heat up enough to draw the gases, and you start getting spillover. Now you got carbon monoxide, you know, or expansion tanks not put in. And with the systems that we have today, expansion tanks are really, really important. You can cause a lot of damage. You can cause a lot of physical damage. If you got a water heater that's 210 degrees, you know, 120 degrees, but it's not heat, the thermostat's not working properly, and you've got too hot of a water heater, you know, and it doesn't have a place to expand to, and it's blowing off, you know, it can cause physical damage. You know, I've been on jobs where people, and it could be damage to your pocketbook.
Right. I was
Right?
going to say, we talked a little bit about that when people try to cut corners.
Right.
Shortcuts or being cheap can be very expensive. We've used that quote a
Absolutely.
number of times on our show for other guests, because and you really helped me to understand, because I'm one of the guys, I'm like, it's plumbing. It's these tubes, you fit them together, they've got it all made for you. You used to have to, we had one of those little cutter things that my dad had, and spin it around and cut the copper pipes. Well, now they're all PVC, and you just fit them together and get them wherever you want to go.
PVC, PEX. I think PEX is the big thing that's coming out now, and we do PEX. You know, it's not one of my favorites, because again, plumbing for me was an art.
Yeah.
And when I ran that copper, it was beautiful. PEX is hard to make pretty, and I drug my feet a long time. I didn't want to get to PEX, but you know, it's also, if you don't change with the times, it can really hurt you.
Sure.
And PEX has become something really big. We've gotten into it. We put in PEX. You know, we have people that ask for it, and we will install it. So.
Okay, well, and that's part of the emphasis there I wanted to make sure we talked about, ladies and gentlemen, was that you need to have somebody who knows what they're talking about, because it does seem like something that may not be too difficult. And the faucet is already set up, so you just got to unscrew a couple little things. But there's always something you don't understand that could be causing a bigger problem, and could be fatal in the case of carbon monoxide or some other things it causes, because the ventilation's not coming. And who knew that the heating? I didn't know that the heater, the water heater, used the same ventilation as the furnace.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, geez, so these things. And somebody, they just hear on the news they died of carbon monoxide. They didn't explain all of that was the cause of it. You'd think that might have been they were in their garage, and that wasn't what happened. They were in the house.
Right.
So crazy to imagine that stuff. And again, back to get it done right the first time. What would we say is the one thing that sets your business apart? PK Plumbing, obviously, been around for so long. We even looked up. You've got a number of reviews going, but we talked about it. You don't count on reviews. You don't need reviews. You've been around so long.
We don't. I mean, we're starting to, because I know that the internet is someplace that people really try to find what they're looking for. And so, as I said before, if you don't change with the times, right?
Yeah.
So it's something that we've actually started focusing more on. So PK Plumbing is owned by PK Construction. We have a young lady that we just hired to come in and set us up with a website. We never really had a website. Set us up with a website. So we're starting to focus more on the reviews and what's coming in. What sets us apart? I think it's the well-rounded plumbers that we have. My guys, they've been through the training. What a lot of people don't understand too with a plumber, and I get people that call and say, hey, that seems a little expensive. Well, what they don't really understand is that these guys go through a lot to get trained and to get to a point where they know when they walk on the job that they're going to be able to help you out and give you the service that you need. It's a 5-year formal apprenticeship through the city and through the county. And with that 5 years, there's also 500 hours of classwork time that they have to put in. Now we belong to the Missouri Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Council, and with that we have access to an e-learning program that's done online. But that's still time that they have to put in. And then after they take their test, and it's a 6-hour test. It's not an easy test. And then after that test, they have to maintain that license. Wow. So they have to do continuing education. Yeah.
All right, everybody, stay tuned. This is the Your Little Castle Show. Dave and I are going to continue with this discussion. But for those of you that saw the show and ended at this point, because we're up to our time limit, we continued the whole show, and you can see it on Your Little Castle Show on YouTube. So check that out. I want to mention that to everybody so they can see this, Dave. But wow, time goes fast. This is a 28-minute show. We've gotten through like the first 5 points that we need to make.
I thought we had about 15 more minutes.
I wanted to kind of give you a heads up there. Literally, I'm like, gosh, we're going so well here. Time flies when you're having fun. But I made the executive decision as the producer here that I'm going to keep it going here. Okay. And we'll just figure out how I ended up dicing this up to be aired on ABC for the time slot that must be filled there. But most people aren't going to watch it there, to be honest. I mean, there will be a lot. There's a big audience ABC has for that, but there's going to be a lot more, ideally, that will see it on your social media, our social media, and we're going to give you a copy of this because you guys have been great. So with that, let's continue on. I want to talk a little bit. I put up on the website, on the walls. We got the TV walls here for everybody, and if you look, there's Dave. But here's the wide shot. So this is our new setup here with a 9-foot TV. I'm sorry, 9-foot TV wall on my right and 11-foot TV wall on my left, and all kinds of great information. So check that out. This is mostly focused on your guys' website because that's where most of other people have other things out there, social media and that kind of stuff. I think the best representation for you guys was what we found here, and that's the About page and the main page. And there's lots of information. It's pkplumbing.com, and if you take a look there on the website, pkplumbingllc.com, right, as I've got up there on the screen for everybody to see. So
the one thing that he taught us early in plumbing school is to know our right from our left.
That's right. Well, and I even knew I was talking about that one, but then I said 9 because I was thinking about that one. But yeah, now we've got the 2 TV walls in here because this is our portable one. I decided I'm watching other shows put up TV walls. why don't we just take the one we got portable? It's not
Sure.
being used very often.
Sure.
Because portable in my little sedan didn't work out so well a couple times, and we broke a few of them. And boy, I had to, please allow us. What's the deal? She said, well, Cowboy, we know what you do in the community, and within 30 days we can technically do that. But that's part of what we have going on. But with that, so let's continue on. Like I say, a couple of really important things I want to talk about. But you talked about the thing that sets your business apart. But I'd like you to go into that a little bit more about specifically what is it you believe that sets you guys apart. When you get down to it, what sets apart PK Plumbing from the other plumbing companies? And not dogging anybody out, but just saying, hey, here's one thing that I've learned as a master plumber that we do that you better make sure the other guys are doing. And I can't say for sure they are or not, but you know that. And you talked to me about a couple of those points when we were having our pregame prep in the green room. But
I'm trying to remember what they were.
If you want me to mention a couple,
Yeah, please do.
Well, it essentially boiled down to that. I think one of the advantages you have is because you have the plumbing side of the house, but then you also have the construction side.
Sure. Yeah.
And
So, I did mention
that works
that.
together.
Yeah, so the PK Construction owns PK Plumbing, and one of the things that it allows us to do is, so PK Construction has in-house. They have tile setters. We have electricians, we have carpenters, and mill shop. We do our own cabinets, and we also own SFI, which is stone fabricators. So we do countertops, and we get into situations where we do. We'll go on a job, and if we've got to open up walls to replace a stack, or we got to pull cabinets in order to get into the walls to access the plumbing, or we have to open up floors. We have the ability to do that, and then we also have the ability to put it back. So it's a one-stop shop. I would say that's probably the big thing that sets us apart. But the other is how knowledgeable my guys are. I cannot. What's the word I'm looking for?
Don't undervalue the fact that you've got experienced guys. I mean, I remember what you were saying to me is there's a lot of people that like to hire your guys because they're so well experienced. They're all licensed.
Right. That's what I was getting ready to say.
Yeah.
I cannot undervalue the knowledge that they have and the experience that they have. One of the things that I did when I came on board at PK Construction, they had a plumbing shop already set up. One of the things I did when I came on board was to get my guys so that they're well rounded. They know how to cable. They know how to install the water heaters. Work on the tankless heaters today. That's something that's really big. Recirc lines have become so poignant in a lot of these big homes that we work in. They want the recirc lines. That adds to complications in the plumbing system, and to know how they work and what to look for if there's an issue. My guys are really experienced at that. And I've had people call me up and say, I've had 5 plumbing companies out here, nobody can figure out what's going on. and we look at it and diagnose it, and normally we're figuring out pretty much what's happening. My mentality has always been, you fix the obvious first, right? So whatever we see as the obvious, that's what we're going to attack at the very beginning. Once we've eliminated that out of the way, we've either fixed the problem or we've narrowed it down to what's going on.
Sure. Yeah, as a matter of process, as a technical analyst for Anheuser-Busch for 10 years, my job was, I was essentially a firefighter, if you will, for technology. And everything was fine until it wasn't. Right. And when there was a problem, you better be here instantly available to make sure that email was what I managed, the systems that did that. And if there was a problem in a foreign country where there's a brewery, I was responsible to make sure that got fixed. And if there was a big problem at corporate, I had to get that fixed. And we did what you're talking about. Take the big things first, analyze, and then break it down and analyze. And once you pick it apart and narrow down to the one issue, and that's what comes with expertise that you guys have.
And sometimes fly fishing can help you figure out what the problem is.
We have talked about that a little bit.
So one of the jobs that that probably, I've seen a lot of things in 41 years, but I never ran into this situation, and it's probably one of the things that makes me laugh the most. PK Construction, before I was on board, built a.
Is it all right if I put that up so people can see PK
Oh,
Construction
absolutely,
website?
absolutely.
So
Please
just keep
do.
talking, David. And
So
I'm gonna
PK Construction is owned by Troy Duncan, and before I came on board, PK Construction had built a pool house for a customer over in the St. Louis area, the St. Louis City area, and it was a big house. It was a very prominent family in the area. They built this pool house, and from the get-go, the homeowners were having trouble with the sewer gas smell, and they couldn't figure out where this problem was coming from, and it was also deteriorating the copper guttering, not only on the pool house but on the main house as well. And PK Construction and the plumber that they had hired that was running the plumbing company at the time couldn't figure out what the problem was. I was working for another company in South St. Louis, and we were called in to take a look at it. And the plumber that was running the construction side took our cabler out there, and they cameraed all the downspouts. They cameraed everything, and nobody could figure out what was going on. And this went on for like 10 years.
Wow.
And I remember the job back when I worked for this company. I came to work for PK Plumbing, running it, and I was there a couple of years when my boss, Troy, came into the office with this armful of plans, and he laid it down on my desk, and he said, "You got to figure this out. Nobody can figure out what's going on here." And so I went to the homeowner, and I said, "Okay, in order to do this, I need to camera everything. I need to get my eyes on everything." We cameraed everything. Everything was on the up and up. Couldn't figure out what was going on. So I had the next step was for me to test the water to see if we were getting a cross connection between the sewer and the storm, and that was fine. That was not going on. So I went fly fishing that weekend. I'm an avid fly fisherman. Love to fly fish. I'm down at Montauk State Park, fishing in a hole behind the lodge, and of course, there's no bathrooms in that area. So I have to go to the bathroom. I have to do nature's calling, right?
Right.
So I'm walking over to the bank to go up into the woods, and I'm walking through an area that has leaves and old leaves and twigs under the water. And as I step on them, I get a hydrogen sulfide gas smell out of the water. And then it clicked. So when I came back home and went back to work on Monday, I had my plumber go to this house, and so the pool house had two sump pumps in the basement. One was for the floor drains and one was for the groundwater. And we pulled the lids for the sump pump for the groundwater, and you could not smell a thing. So I had my plumber cut the line outside. Now the sump pump for the groundwater discharged into the downspout lines. So I had him cut the 90 outside, and then I had the apprentice run water into the sump pump line. And when the pump kicked on and agitated the water, it created a hydrogen sulfide gas smell, which was rotten eggs. And it was going throughout the whole property. So we figured out that part of the puzzle. What was happening was the groundwater, the hydrogen sulfide gas was being trapped in the water molecules. And when the pump would kick on, it would agitate it and release those gases. So then I had to figure out, so I called an engineer friend of mine who was also a metallurgist. And I asked him, would hydrogen sulfide gas be caustic enough to deteriorate copper gutters? And he said, absolutely not.
This is some deep stuff. I mean, how many people understand this is what's going on in their house?
Nobody. So,
all right.
So I went, okay. Then it dawned on me, it's a pool house, right? So the equipment for the pool filter was down in the basement, and it was discharging in another sump pump line. So I asked him, I said, would chlorine gas be caustic enough to deteriorate copper? And he said, absolutely. It was discharging into another sump pump line, and it was going out into the storm line. So it was traveling through all the gutters, and it was deteriorating the gutters. So then our solution was to take the two sump pump lines and run a completely separate discharge line all the way down to the main and tie it in onto the main side of the traps, and took care of the issue.
This ends up being now you know why you have master plumbers who are actually the experts that they are, that are certified to do what they do, because this is like having a master's course. I mean, you've got to literally, and boy, there are people who do not have their wits about them to calculate this, and they're going, I don't know what happened, but come over here and fix it. Is that
right?
How often is that something you hear? You talked about one of the biggest problems that most people end up having. I said, and the question we always ask is, if there's one thing you can say that is the biggest issue that consumers, the biggest mistake they make, what would you say that was? And I liked your answer, because I know there's something, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier too, but literally if there's what is the biggest mistake customers make?
Do it yourself.
Do it yourselfer, they call it. Right?
I and like I said before, I'm not saying that there aren't people out there that are handy, but there's more to the job a lot of times. And and I'm a handy guy, and there are some things that I'll try myself, and more often than not, what I'll discover in the midst of trying to do it myself, that there's more to it than what I thought there was, and it ends up costing me more money than it would have if I would have hired a professional at the time.
Well, and that again is something that most people do not take the time or even have the wits about to understand it. You got to be an expert. That's why you hire the expert to do it right. And something else we talked about was the fact that you don't claim to be and do not aspire to be the cheapest. Right.
No,
because it's cheap again. Causes
if you're looking for the cheapest plumber, don't call us. We're not the most expensive. We're pretty much to the middle to lower end. But I do get customers that call and say, "Wow, that was really expensive." It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort to get to a point where, you're enough of a professional to walk on a job and to be able to diagnose something that somebody else can't see, or to think, like you just said, think it through and figure it out. I could go into anybody's house and just start opening up walls, and make all kinds of damage. But my whole thought process is that if I can figure it out before I open up walls, so that if we have to open up walls, we've limited where we're opening. What damage are we creating? We've limited that, right, so that we're not tearing up a ton of stuff. I had a customer call one time, and he was getting a really bad sewer gas smell in his bathroom, second floor bathroom. And we went in and ran cameras through the sewer, cameras to the line. Cheapest way to go, least expensive, and least invasive. And everything that we saw, and it was all cast iron, everything that we saw told us that everything was fine. So then I knew that it had to be a vent problem. And when you flushed the toilet, it was pulling the trap from the sink and from the tub. So it had to be a vent problem somewhere. So we had to figure out, okay, where. So I know that when you tie a vent in to an existing vent from one floor to the next, it has to be a certain distance above the overflow of that fixture, the highest fixture on that level. So I had a pretty good idea where that vent was at. And so this is the vent for the bathroom on the first floor. So we opened up a small section of the wall, found the vent, and you'll never believe what was going on. because it was cast iron, there was rust in that pipe. And a big hunk of rust had broken free. And when you flushed the toilet and it would suck air, that piece of rust would go down and close the vent off. Yeah. And the minute it was done, it would open back up again.
Wow.
So as it was closing off, it was stopping the air to come down to equalize the atmospheric pressure in the pipe. So it was pulling the water from a trap that had nothing to do with the toilet. You know, but if you don't understand how plumbing works and the physics of it, you never figure that out. You start opening up walls.
Yeah,
and
you would have
all
caused
kinds of
yourself. They'd
things.
be replacing half the
Exactly.
interior walls.
So we were able
inside the
to go
building.
in and cut that vent, that section of pipe out, and install a new piece of 2-inch PVC, and took care of the problem.
Wow. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. So, Dave, tell me as we continue here. This is going to end up being one of our longest shows, and that's fine because people need this information. And I'm one that figures if you're going to do it, you might as well get it all done right the first time, so you don't have to come back and do everything again because that just wastes everybody time.
Absolutely.
But tell me, what is the process? Somebody calls you. What's the normal process? Somebody, I mean, as I figured out, you do a Google search, you find the guys you're looking for, you go to pkplumbingllc.com, and you call the number. What happens next?
You're going to talk to Rhonda. That's who you want to talk to. And so, and one of the things that when you were showing our site up on the board, you noticed that it had Aries Plumbing alongside of it.
Right.
So PK Plumbing just recently purchased Aries Plumbing. Aries Plumbing was down in South City, South County area, Afton area. We purchased them for several different reasons. One, I needed help. I needed more guys. I had a ton of work. I needed more guys. The other was to build a bigger and better service department, and that's one of the things that I really want to emphasize is the service of PK Plumbing. And we've got two great service plumbers, Jimmy and Richard. They're very knowledgeable. They do a great job. They have a great rapport with the customers. You feel like when they walk into the house that you got a friend. In fact, a lot of Aries customers call us and say, "Is Jimmy still there? I want Jimmy." Jimmy's been a plumber for a long time. I actually knew Jimmy from when I first started into plumbing. He worked for a company down in Jefferson County. It was his stepdad's company. Okay. And I got to know him down there. And when we purchased him and he came on board, he's like, "I know you. I'm okay with this." You know, he was a little nervous, but
sure, whenever
he really enjoys working for us, and we want a better service base to give better customer service. You know, and Rhonda was one of the people at Aries Plumbing, and a lot of the Aries customers are really comfortable with Rhonda and talking to her. So you call that number and you ask for Rhonda, and if it's a job that just needs a service plumber. She'll look at it and say, "Okay, when can we get Jimmy or Richard in there?" If you say, "Well, I'd rather have Jimmy," she says, "Absolutely. When would you like Jimmy to be there? When can we set up a time?" And they'll set that time up, and Jimmy will go do what he needs to do. If it's a situation to where, "Well, I really need an estimate. I need to know what it's going to cost me," they'll put it on my desk. She'll look at my calendar and set it up. I'll come out to your house. Normally, if it's in the morning, I'd rather have coffee and donuts, right?
Right.
I'm kidding. So I'll come out to the house and I'll take a look at it and try to figure it out, what's going on and what we need to do, and get an estimate figured up. I try to do it that day. We've had a lot of work come across my table lately, so it may take me a few days. I'll get your email address. I'll figure up a bid and get it to you. If you decide, "Hey, I want to do this," you give Rhonda a call, say, "When can we do this? When can we start?" And Rhonda will get it on the calendar.
There it is, everybody. Wow, it's a pretty simple process, and you feel like you're really working with somebody that is an expert that you can trust because, I mean, don't we all worry a little bit about who's coming to my house and is this thing going to get done the first time? And I think after people see this interview with you, they'll be able to say, "All right, there's some guys we know."
We're starting with a new software to where when you call and it's set up, say, the Cardinal Cowboy calls me up and says, hey Dave, I got a toilet that's
we go.
running. There he
All
is.
right,
There he is.
All right. So
I mean,
should have
you
put this on
can't-
sooner when he was. It's always when you're
Absolutely.
helping the
Absolutely.
community. We put the hat on, but yeah.
So if the Cardinal Cowboy calls me up and says, I got a toilet that's running, first thing I'm going to say is that's impossible because toilets are inanimate objects. They can't run, right?
They don't normally
No, I'm
run down
kidding.
the street. Right?
I'm kidding, right?
I know that one.
No, that it won't shut off. So what were we talking about?
Well, as a matter of an issue when somebody's calling and people try. I know we've covered a lot here.
Oh, yeah. So we've got a new software. You call up and you say, hey, I've got a toilet that won't shut off. And we set it up on the schedule. What's going to happen is, say they've got it set up for 11 o'clock on Wednesday morning. Okay. So, and it's going to be Jimmy. So when Jimmy's done with his service call before you, he's going to go onto his app on his phone and he's going to hit it. And you're going to get an alert on your phone that says Jimmy's on its way. Not only is it going to say Jimmy's on its way, but it's going to have his picture. And it's also going to have a small bio of Jimmy. So that if you've never used this before, you got an idea who's going to show up at your doorstep. Okay? So you feel a little bit more comfortable. Here's the thing about PK Plumbing. We've gotten to the point where, with PK Construction, we do a lot of work. We do a lot of remodel work. And my plumbers get to know the homeowners to a point where we're almost on first name basis. And my guys believe that you don't want anybody else in your house. Okay? So when you got a problem, you're going to call PK Plumbing. And normally if Max or Brian or Tony has been the plumber on your job, that's the guy that's going to come there, to do what needs to be done. Now, if it's a small service call, Richard or Jimmy's going to handle it normally because my guys are doing remodel work. But if you got something that you need handled, something that's going to warrant, or you'd say, I'd rather have Max. Max is going to be the guy that's going to come out to your house. I actually have some of when I first started with PK, I worked as a journeyman. And I have some homeowners, they'll call me up in the middle of the day to talk to me about getting somebody over to repair it. And we'll talk about grandkids and we'll talk about what's going on with the families. And, I feel like we've been friends for years, and we have been. We absolutely have been.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of fun and cool stuff we get to talk about. I literally... I felt like we've been friends for like 20 years by the time we had that last conversation, and really hit on some important life. We don't want to get into all of our discussion we had there because it was really neat stuff, but it was kind of our own little thing, and people may not. But I just, when you get to know somebody, you can see somebody's got the integrity, the hard work, the history, and you shared a little bit of some of the hurdles you've had to overcome personally in your life. I mean, those are the things that I think help us all realize that we're all human, and we still have to help take care of each other. And get the job, but get the job done right, and make sure you can work with people that you can trust to make sure that happens.
Absolutely, sobriety. I just celebrated 31 years.
31 years.
31 years, and it's been a wild ride. Somebody once told me, always take God as your co-pilot. And then I had a sponsor tell me one time, you want a really wild ride, put him in the pilot seat. And it has been. It absolutely has been. I don't try to push doors open. I believe that everything that's happened in my life and where I'm at right now, I've put my shoes on, I put my pants on, well, not in that order, of course. Put my shirt on and I get in the van and I go to work. I answer the phone and I do what's in front of me, and everything else has been by God's design. So the success that I've had is not mine. I've tried to learn and use all the situations that happened in my life, my successes and my failures, to learn from. They're all blessings. They're all gift. And I've learned more from my failures than I ever did from my successes.
Sure.
But I try to use those things to gain, not just to gain knowledge, but to gain empathy. So that if you are struggling with a problem, I'm there for you, not because of a paycheck, but because I've been there and I understand.
Well, it's great to know that when you're working with somebody, and how often do we get to know each other this well when you've got a plumber coming into your house? And
Right.
we wanted to help share this kind of side of what Dave runs over there at PK Plumbing, because he's the one who actually makes the decisions and runs the shop and has everything in order. And that's who you're going to talk to if there's an issue. That's who ultimately is going to make the decisions, I guess, with regard to all that.
Absolutely.
And it's good to know somebody on a much more personal level, and you get to see that. And just so happens these days we don't get to have our interoperating meetings as often as we used to. We don't go to the but we still do some of that. But now people will watch this on the interwebs these days, right?
Right.
And hopefully
Right.
people will enjoy this and learn a little bit and see what it's like to work with, and whether it's Dave you choose to work with PK Plumbing, but you understand what a professional does.
Right.
And Dave is willing to share.
Absolutely. Even if you're not going to go with PK Plumbing, hey, I mean it is what it is. And there's good plumbers out there. There are very good plumbers out there. But just make sure you're doing your research, because if you don't, I went on a job in a city. It's been probably a month or so ago, and a lady who, she saved and saved and saved to remodel her bathroom, her master bathroom. And when I got over there, it was just amazing what I saw. It was, I mean, and they took this lady for some money, and she'll never get it back.
Wow.
The one thing, and here's the one thing to check on is license. For me to have a master's license and for me to run a business, I have to have a bond.
Wow.
And that bond is there for your protection. And the reason that it is because if I do something that's not up to standard, and you contact me and I decide I'm not going back out there, and I don't answer your call, you have a recourse. You can go to the city if you're living in the city, or you can go to the county and tell them. And then the county's going to hold that bond and say, you either fix this, or we're going to pay another licensed individual to go repair it, and we're going to pull that money out of your bond. That's what that's there for.
Wow.
A lot of people don't know that.
A lot of that just going on behind the scenes. Those are things, again, you don't know until you get to talk to an expert.
Right.
Dave, great information. We appreciate your time on the show here. And,
Hey, I appreciate you, Carter. I mean, and you're right. The conversations that we had, I feel like we were instant friends, and I really enjoyed meeting with you.
Well, we want to take the time. I think so much of what we do these days is whiz bang, quick, click, forward, text, email, and we don't hardly get to know anybody.
They're paying me $10,000 to come out and do this.
Well, that was
kidding.
double what we paid Brad Pitt to come out. Brad's a personal friend of mine. You can see based on my looks, but I mean, literally, this is the element I think that helps people understand what they've got.
Sure.
We still need to connect as
Absolutely.
humans here, and this gives everybody an opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, you're enjoying the Your Little Castle show. Stay tuned for more excitement. Tune in, go to the yourlittlecastle.com or our Your Little Castle YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We got it all out there, everybody. Thanks. Stay tuned for more. Giddy up.